Day 7 was supposed to be hard, but not this hard. In the middle of the stampede, the ground shakes, and a goblin lord marches out like a final boss that shouldn't exist this early. The villagers start getting pushed back, their swords are wearing out, and even Aesel is in danger. But our MC Kamiya isn't just another player, he's the guy who made this game. So when the goblin lord swings that huge mace, Kamiya does something insane. He starts parrying over and over, counting each hit like his life depends on it. Because it does. And once he reaches the magic number, he triggers a hidden bug that turns his attacks into guaranteed critical hits. In one burst, he rushes in and slices the goblin lord down, saving the base by a hair. But winning one fight isn't enough. Kamiya upgrades the base to level 8, boosts the walls and workshop, and Ginger finally unveils something huge, golems that can fight like their masters and even help with work. Well, how did he end up in this situation? There is a game called Last, and it is the world's best-selling survival game where players gather resources in a world inhabited by monsters. They also build bases and aim to survive alongside their companions. There is the freedom of strategy and also in depth of the NPCs, making the game pretty balanced. As for the events and updates, they are carried out routinely, ultimately introducing new developments to the game every time. However, behind this best-selling game is the sole developer, a shut-in dude named Kamiya Sushi. Sitting in his room, Kamiya just finished the version 3 update of the game, making it the best version of itself yet. He implemented the base level 100, which triggers an ending story for the season once achieved. He then picks up his phone to send a text to his partner that Season 3 is live. However, Kamiya doesn't think he's going to stop at Season 3, as he is already conceptualizing the next season. Apparently, it's been 5 years since development started, and it's been 3 years since it was released. Even with this, Kamiya still has a lot of ideas in his head, and he believes the game is only going to get more interesting from here on. Moments later, his partner, Onohara, enters the room, asking if the game has truly been finished. Kamiya is surprised that Onohara showed up so fast, and Onohara reveals that he came running the moment he got the text. Apparently, Onohara Wataru is the game's business and licensing representative. Onohara commends Kamiya for finishing the game himself, but Kamiya mentions that the background music and some designs were outsourced. Even with this, Onohara still thinks it is impressive that Kamiya was able to finish the game on his own. Kamiya then returns the flowers, telling Onohara that they were able to make it this big because of him. Basically, Kamiya had all the time in the world to create the game because Onohara was supporting him as a producer. It turns out that Onohara and Kamiya actually met in high school. Kamiya sees him as his benefactor who offered to produce his game and even decided not to go to university after seeing it before it was released. Onohara then tells Kamiya that the game is too good not to sell, unless the people in the world are already going dumb. He mentions that the recent user satisfaction survey was a super high score of 98. Kamiya hears this and decides that he is not going to stop until he makes it 100. However, Onohara believes this is impossible because there is no game that appeals to every single person. Kamiya, on the other hand, thinks it is possible to make people think the game is interesting since they have answered the survey and shown interest once. Onohara then walks over to Kamiya's desk, asking him if he signed the documents he sent over the last time. Kamiya says yes, and because the documents are quite a lot, he tells Onohara that he is going to leave the details to him. Onohara grabs the document and lets out an evil smile while telling Kamiya that he appreciates the trust. Suddenly, 3 hefty dudes enter the room, and Onohara tells Kamiya that he is going to take the documents while letting him know that he is done for. Kamiya is surprised to hear this, and he asks Onohara what he means by that. Onohara makes fun of him, telling him the only thing he knows how to do is make games, which is why he is taking all the rights to Last away from him. Kamiya argues with Onohara, reminding him that he created the game, and he is going to need him for future updates. Onohara then tells Kamiya that with the implementation of base level 100, Last is already a complete game. Onohara tells Kamiya that, from the business side of things, future updates are basically useless. This pisses Kamiya off, and he rushes to grab Onohara's shirt, but one of the bodyguards tackles him to the floor. Onohara lets Kamiya know that he intentionally brought bodyguards because he knows that there is no way Kamiya would have quietly agreed. Onohara tells Kamiya that his obsession with the game was in the way because he kept doing updates that didn't lead directly to profit. In addition, Kamiya's supervision was too strict, which didn't give them room to properly expand the merchandise. However, now that the game is finished, Onohara believes that they can max out profits without Kamiya in the picture. Kamiya is disappointed, and he berates Onohara for not talking to him about it. Onohara brushes this off, saying there is no way Kamiya would have agreed. Onohara then tells Kamiya to leave the room because it is also part of the things he signed in the contract to let go. With this, Kamiya lost all authority to Last, and he considered filing a lawsuit, but the outlook was not looking good. In addition to this, Onohara made sure to skillfully manipulate the public opinion, creating an atmosphere where people believed the game should belong to Onohara. Kamiya is left raging in his room, and while banging his table, he notices something on his PC. Curious about what it is, he clicks it, and the message he gets from this tells him to stay in the game world forever, since he loves the game so much. Kamiya is wondering what this means when a bright light appears in front of him, sucking him into the PC. By the time he opens his eyes, he finds himself in the game world, where he is being welcomed by the game's assistant, a fairy named Leafy. While telling him what the game is all about, it suddenly dawns on Kamiya that the outfit he is wearing signifies a character meant for the free trial version. This is basically a character that has the lowest stats, no skills, no equipment compatibility, and it is the weakest character destined to die during the first monster raid after experiencing the basic flow of the game. Knowing all of this, Kamiya fears that he is definitely going to die on the first night of the game. Leafy then asks Kamiya to input his name in the provided window. However, instead of inputting his name, he remembers that he can enter the developer mode with a hidden code. He inputs the code, and it turns on a bright light, showing that it worked. Leafy is shocked to see this, and it immediately dawns on her that Kamiya is the one who developed last. She almost has a brain freeze from blushing so hard, but she manages to pull herself together to introduce herself to Kamiya. Apparently, Leafy is a forest fairy who protects nature, believing that human activity is also part of nature, and because of this, she provides various pieces of advice to people who come to the forest. Kamiya then asks her if this is the world of Last, and he confirms it, saying it is definitely the game world. Kamiya then asks Leafy if she can view the game's meta information. He wants her to view the parts related only to development. Leafy replies that she can do this, since Kamiya has already entered developer mode. Leafy then displays the meta information, which shows that everything was basically created by Kamiya. However, the game master has been changed to Wataru Onohara. Leafy is surprised to see Onohara's name, and she asks Kamiya who the dude is. With pain in his heart, Kamiya replies that Onohara is the dude who stole the rights to Last from him. Kamiya also believes that he is currently in the game world thanks to Onohara's involvement. Leafy is disappointed when she hears this, and she talks about how she can't forgive Onohara's actions. On the other hand, Kamiya is wondering why he is in the game world. Since he doesn't understand the logic behind this, the only conclusion he can come to is that he can't allow himself to die in the game world. Kamiya promises to survive the game world and take back his game from Onohara. Kamiya then asks Leafy if she is going to help him, and she says yes. After this, Kamiya uses the warp feature to find himself at the base station, which is still a level 1 base. Leafy apologizes, saying the best she could create is a level 1 base. However, Kamiya has no issues with this because these are the specifications he left in the game. It turns out that even when he is in developer mode, all he can see are the parameters. Kamiya then makes his way into the base, where he finds a magic stone sitting at the far end of the room. This is a magic stone called Arcanite, also known as the Source Ore. It is a stone with special power that can store resources and convert them into weapons or items. Since it is the tutorial, Leafy believes Kamiya doesn't need it, but Kamiya objects, saying he is going to take the tutorial. Since monsters don't spawn during the tutorial, Kamiya believes that it is the safest time for him to gather materials. Leafy agrees with this because normal gathering might be difficult, thanks to the fact that Kamiya is using the trial version character, which is meant to die on the first night. Even Kamiya knows that in his current state, he stands no chance whatsoever. Kamiya then suggests that they start immediately because he can't waste time. Leafy agrees to this, and she immediately kicks the tutorial into play. Kamiya starts running around to gather materials, since he knows everything that there is to know. Kamiya then returns by evening, looking totally rough. He tells Leafy that they need to craft before it gets dark, and Leafy is shocked that Kamiya has materials to craft. Kamiya reveals that he made it possible within the specifications. However, there hasn't been any player who has pulled it off until that moment. Kamiya then starts the crafting process, and in no time, he gets a wooden sword and a small wooden barricade. Kamiya is impressed that he got the barricade, but at the same time, he knows it is unreliable, since the trial version character wasn't designed to be able to clear the first night. Even though the enemies are going to move exactly as he expects them to, Kamiya knows the survival probability is a few % at its best. Usually, the player would be guided to the retail version, but this time around, everything is different. Later that night, Kamiya receives the quest to survive the night, and Leafy wishes him luck. Kamiya stands in front of the base waiting for the enemy. He soon spots a deer, and while he is still staring at the deer is cut to death by a goblin. Basically, they are low-level monsters with low intelligence. They sometimes attack in swarms and definitely should not be underestimated. Kamiya, on the other hand, has trash stats, is equipped with a wooden sword, and has no special skill. Without wasting time, the goblin lunges toward Kamiya, aiming to push its sword into Kamiya's neck. However, Kamiya manages to dodge the strike. Leafy knows that Kamiya is only able to dodge this because he knows the goblin's parameters inside out. However, the goblin continues swinging at Kamiya, and at some point, Kamiya gets cut on his arm. This basically tells him that his stats are trash, and even though he knows the attack is coming, he can't avoid it. To make it worse, his strength is also insufficient, which is pretty much expected. Before he knows it, he gets kicked in the chest, causing him to cough up blood. He sends crashing into the distance, and by the way he is getting hurt, he realizes that the pain is real. However, he is not about to stand by and let the game creator be killed by the game itself. Kamiya then runs toward the base, forcing the goblin to chase him down. Since he doesn't have the power to face a goblin head-on, he leaps into the air while activating the small barricade. The goblin is forced to leap after him, but by the time it lands, it gets caught in the barricade, ultimately impaling it. With the goblin's movement restricted, Kamiya believes he has a chance to kill it if he puts the entirety of his body weight behind it. He leaps toward the goblin and he puts everything he has into the strike. He strikes the goblin's head, ultimately killing it and passing the quest to survive the night. Kamiya then promises himself to survive the game even though it is pretty hard to do so, but he is motivated by the fact that he is the only one who knows everything about the game. Kamiya is willing to crawl up from the very trash to take back everything that was his. The next morning, Kamiya stands in front of the magic stone, holding out the sword to feel the texture. Without a doubt, he could see that it feels very real. Leafy then shows up, asking him if he is going out to gather materials again. However, Kamiya says no because he believes that yesterday's tutorial was already enough. He tells Leafy that he is only going to focus on crafting for the day because there is someone she needs to meet as fast as she can. Leafy opens the inventory, and she is shocked to see the amount of materials that Kamiya has gathered. Basically, in the game, various materials can be collected from around the base, and these materials are converted into 3 types of basic resources, which are then stored within the mana stone. The first resource is mana, which acts as a form of life energy, used for developing people or for generating magic-type items. The second one is element, and this is required for producing physical goods like food and buildings. The third is gold, and it is used to buy items that cannot be crafted. Kamiya then commences crafting with the materials he has. By the time it is done, he managed to get himself a bow, 10 arrows, a watchtower, and logs. Even though he would have loved to craft something more powerful, his low stats would get in the way. Kamiya then mentions his desire to get himself allies if he actually wants to survive past day 7. It turns out that a stampede happens on day 7. In the game, it is known that monsters occur basically every night, but the stampede is a massive monster outbreak that occurs every 7 days, and it is on a whole different level of difficulty. Monsters would troop out in their numbers, and the difficulty would be turned high so that even players of the full retail version would struggle to survive. In theory, it is hard for a trial version character to make it to day 7, but if they do, it is considered impossible to clear a stampede with a trial version character. The idea is that if one can clear it in the demo, there would be no need to buy the full game. Even Leafy is freaking out because he knows how hard it is to survive a stampede. Kamiya is asking what would happen if he died in the game world. Leafy replies that she has no idea, but it is known that NPCs don't even respawn, which means Kamiya's death will definitely not end well. However, Leafy assures Kamiya that she is going to help him in whatever way she can. However, due to regulations, she is not allowed to participate in combat. Even when it comes to advice, she believes Kamiya doesn't need her advice, but what she can do is gather information, and this is what she promises to do. Kamiya is glad to hear this, and he thanks Leafy for it, telling her that he will be counting on her. Kamiya also tells Leafy to stop calling him creator and just go with his name, but Leafy rejects this. After this, Kamiya steps outside, and he creates the watchtower. Kamiya talks about how inconvenient it is that he has to be physically present to set everything up. Leafy confirms this, saying the base level is still low, which is why he won't be able to deploy things directly from the map. After the watchtower is completed, Kamiya stands in it to take a glance at the world around him. Kamiya is blown away, and he talks about how incredible it is. Leafy glazes him, reminding him that he was the one who created everything. Seeing how incredible everything is, Kamiya gets more motivation to actually take it back from Onohara. Later that night, Kamiya receives the quest to survive the night again. He pulls out his sword, waiting for the enemy to show up. Moments later, 2 goblins emerge from the forest. He's not surprised by this because the concept of combat is actually different from the first day. Kamiya doesn't hesitate before making his move. Even the bow is pretty hard to pull because at his level there are no strength modifiers. Kamiya obviously can't complain about this since he was the one who set it up. Surprisingly, he misses his first shot, and Leafy tells him that this happened because the accuracy modifiers are also not active yet. Kamiya cannot complain since he designed everything to be that way. Kamiya then takes another shot, and this time he hits one of the goblins in the leg. The goblin falls as it screams in pain, but Kamiya is not done yet. He fires another arrow that pierces the goblin's chest to finish it off. Kamiya then jumps from the watchtower to close the distance between him and the last goblin. From what he learned the night before, he has figured out that there is a way he can stay one step ahead even though his stats are shit. With the goblin close to him, Kamiya is able to maintain his accuracy, and the arrow goes straight into the goblin's body. Kamiya fires another shot to get the goblin down. He then walks off to it to deliver a headshot to finish it off. With this, Kamiya survives the second night, and Leafy celebrates the win with him. However, there is a lady watching everything unfold from the forest. The next morning, Kamiya steps out to gather the usable arrows because he can't afford to waste resources. Basically, fired arrows have a chance at breaking, but those that remain intact can be recovered and reused. While inspecting, Kamiya realizes that there are 2 intact arrows, but he can only find 1. However, he is not surprised because he already knows what happened to the second arrow. Just then, he gets a quest, telling him to find the whereabouts of the lost arrow. Kamiya spots a trail leading into the forest, and he follows it. As they trail the forest, Kamiya urges Leafy to be careful. Leafy assures him that she will be fine, since she can't interfere with the game's content, and the game also cannot harm her. It turns out that the game has a feature where NPCs can turn into allies if certain conditions are met during gameplay. An NPC will occasionally wander the base, and if one clears their unique recruitment quest, the said NPC will join the player. Basically, NPCs have various specialties, ranging from combat to production, which makes them essential for beating the game. Since his life is currently on the line, Kamiya knows that he definitely needs allies. Meanwhile, the lady hunter, Anemone, watching them the night before, is hiding in a tree. She believes that she is in the clear and jumps down when she sees what appears to be a trap. Suddenly, Kamiya appears behind her, telling her that they are not her enemies. Instead of listening to whatever Kamiya has to say, Anemone makes a break for it and dashes into the forest. Even Kamiya is shocked that Anemone ran away because he never implemented a development like that. Leafy then comes up with the idea that since Kamiya, the game's creator, has now become a resident of the game world, it appears that the game scenario is no longer unfolding automatically. Leafy then tells Kamiya that he might have to persuade Anemone through actual dialogue because they have certainly spooked her. It then dawns on Kamiya that playing the game and actually doing it are two different things. Kamiya starts wondering if the characters are going to become enemies if he handles the whole situation the wrong way, since they are already alive. Later that day, Kamiya returns to the base after gathering resources. Leafy asks him if he was able to replenish the necessary elements, and Kamiya says yes, revealing that it was actually good that no monsters showed up. He walks into the base station and suggests that they start crafting right away. Leafy then asks him if he thinks his plan would work, and Kamiya replies that he was the one who wrote Anemone's backstory, and he believes that the method he is about to employ has the highest chance of success. In Anemone's backstory, she was a hunter who lived alone with her father, and after he died, she continued living in the forest by herself. This is basically how Kamiya designed her, but he believes that if he can make her feel the warmth of living with others, she might actually abandon her stoic lifestyle and join him. Even with this, Kamiya is not 100% confident since they are off script. Kamiya then crafts the materials he needs, which are an iron pot, a ladle, salt, pepper, ground meat, and 2 sets of tableware. Once the ingredients are complete, Kamiya gets down to cooking, and he expresses his shock that he is actually cooking in a game, which he didn't think would be possible. Leafy lets him know that he can actually generate finished meals once his level increases, but Kamiya says cooking is not actually a bad experience. Leafy could see that Kamiya is good at cooking, and Kamiya mentions that he lived alone for a long time, so he is used to shutting himself away at home just so he can work on the game. Kamiya mentions that after he just graduated from high school, Onohara used to come around a lot, but everything about that is now ancient history. Moments later, Anemone shows up, pointing her bow at Kamiya. Kamiya raises his hand, telling Anemone that they are not her enemy. This confuses Anemone, who asks Kamiya if there are others with him. It then dawns on Kamiya that Anemone can't see Leafy. Kamiya corrects himself, telling Anemone that he is alone. He introduces himself, and Anemone does the same. She then asks Kamiya where she is because she was hunting, and before she knows it, she finds herself in the forest, where she didn't even recognize. Kamiya lets Anemone know that he just got there too, which means he doesn't know the layout of the area either. Kamiya points to the food on the fire, asking Anemone if she is interested. He assures her that it is not poisoned, but the food is just too much for one person to eat alone. Kamiya takes some of the food and gives it to Anemone, telling her that it is a hamburger steak, which is made by grinding up beef, onions, breadcrumbs, salt, pepper, and then grilling it. Anemone takes a bite, and she immediately encounters Foodgasmic, forcing her to rush the food, while Kamiya smiles behind her. After she is done eating, she thanks Kamiya for the food, telling him that it is her first time eating the dish. She then asks Kamiya if she can have more, and Kamiya says yes because he has the ingredients. However, he lets her know that there is a price. Anemone asks Kamiya what he wants, and Kamiya replies that he wants her strength in battle because they are in a dangerous place. Anemone takes a moment to think about it, and Kamiya lets her know that the only way not to be a prey is to be the hunter. The system then hits Kamiya with the regular quest of surviving the night, while telling him that Anemone will join if he can fight alongside her and win. Surprisingly, Anemone tells Kamiya that she is up to join him in battle. Not long after this, 3 goblins appear in the distance, and Leafy believes this is all. But Kamiya knows that there are still more hiding in the forest. Just as he said, more goblins emerge from the forest. Kamiya prepares for battle and he lets Anemone know that he needs backup. Kamiya pulls out his sword from the storage space, and this impresses Anemone, who starts wondering if Kamiya is a contract holder of the Mana Stone. Kamiya goes after the goblins, dodging their strikes, and the moment he manages to isolate one of them, he calls on Anemone, who finishes the goblin with a headshot. Anemone is impressed that even though Kamiya is engaged in combat, he is still keeping track of their line of sight. Kamiya continues struggling with the goblins, and the moment he finds an opening again, he calls on Anemone to do the job. Anemone responds fast and pokes a hole in the goblin's brain. One of the goblins suddenly pushes Kamiya to the ground, but he has already gained so much momentum that he kicks the goblin off of his body before Anemone meets it halfway with an arrow to the head. At this point, the other goblins are mad that the two have killed their comrades. They lunge at Kamiya more aggressively, while some go after Anemone. Anemone fires the first shot straight at one of the goblin's chests. However, she realizes that the bow won't be able to make the second shot, and she whips out her dagger to block the incoming attack. Kamiya then screams at Anemone to fall back towards the cabin because she doesn't need to focus on finishing off the goblins. Anemone does as told, and she does a backflip toward the cabin. The aggressive goblin chasing her soon activates a trap, and it falls into an already prepared spike. Kamiya smiles when he realizes that the trap worked, and he commends his idea for crafting the traps. Anemone then goes on the offense, leaving an expression of fear on the other goblin that was previously chasing her. On the other hand, Kamiya is finding it difficult to handle the goblin with a mace that is trying to end its life. He realizes that he is having a difficult time, thanks to the trash stats that the character has. Before he knows it, the goblin disarms him, but just as the goblin is about to smash his head in, an arrow comes flying directly into the goblin's head, killing it. Kamiya is shocked, and when he turns around, he realizes that Anemone had killed the zombie she was engaging with a dagger, which gave her just enough time to help him out. With this, Kamiya survives on the third day too. After the battle, Kamiya heads to the cabin to organize the inventory with the mana stone. This is when Anemone confirms that he is truly a mana stone contractor. Kamiya confirms this, saying he recently contracted the magic stone. Apparently, NPCs actually understand various player-specific abilities to be special magic only usable by those contracted with a mana stone when corresponding to game controls. Kamiya then finally makes his move, and he tells Anemone to join him since she has nowhere to go, and he needs allies to survive too. Anemone talks about the popular saying that revolves around those who contracted with the mana stone having a mission for the world. Based on this belief, Anemone believes that there might have been a reason she got lost and ended up where Kamiya is. In addition, she commends Kamiya's combat skills. She then stretches her hand to shake Kamiya, which is a sign of agreement. The system informs Kamiya that Anemone has joined his team. The following morning, Kamiya wakes early to prepare breakfast. Not long after this, Anemone steps out and Kamiya almost passes out in shock when he sees how gorgeous she looks without her combat outfit. Kamiya quickly turns away so that she won't see how red he has turned. Anemone talks about how she has lived with her father in the forest for a long time, and this means a change for her. Apparently, Kamiya has intentions of upgrading the base, so he can add more rooms as fast as he can. Kamiya admits that Anemone's addition is a good combat force, but he knows that only he and Anemone cannot survive the stampede, which is why upgrading the base is the key to their survival. After breakfast, Kamiya steps out to gather materials, and Anemone commends his efficiency at gathering materials. When they return to the base, Anemone notices that Kamiya looks worried, and she asks him what is wrong. Kamiya reveals that the resources needed to level up the base are not enough yet. Anemone is confused by what Kamiya means by leveling up the base. Kamiya explains that if they store enough resources in the magic stone, they can use its power to construct buildings and set up barricades. He mentions that this was why he asked her to help gather resources, but it appears that it is still not enough. Kamiya mentions that there is a monster outbreak that happens every 7 days, and they are going to need barricades and more traps. He lets her know that if they are going to survive, they need to be prepared. After hearing this, Anemone steps out, telling Kamiya that she is going to gather more of the resources that they need. Kamiya thanks her for the help, telling her that he's going to think about other options in the meantime. Kamiya then talks about how hard it is to level up, even though he has been able to recruit Anemone early in the game. Kamiya wishes that he had a drop rate boost to help him. From Leafy's tips, it turns out that some character abilities and magic items have effects that boost drop rates for better items. However, Kamiya's trial version character doesn't have the said bonuses. Since there is no way with this, Kamiya tells Leafy that they need to think of another way, and he suggests that she bring up all the developer mode consoles. Leafy happily does this, and she mentions that it would be great if they could tweak the parameters directly. Kamiya reveals that this is tough system-wise, but even if they can, doing it while the game is running is pretty risky. This is because Last is a complex game system, and various AI adjustment systems are running in real time. Basically, if a numerical discrepancy shows up in the game, the AI wastes no time correcting it. However, corrections only work for discrepancies within the game's design scope because too many changes could exceed the AI's correction range, causing unexpected bugs or malfunctions. However, Kamiya knows fully well that they are not going to survive the 7th day as it is. He starts wondering if there is another method beyond the normal gameplay. Suddenly, it dawns on him that with developer functions, there might be a way to level up regardless of resource amount. Kamiya then asks Leafy if it is possible for them to use instant build mode. When it comes to instant build mode, it is a test function that was used during development, which allows building facilities and upgrading regardless of resources on hand. It then dawns on Leafy that with instant build mode, the system AI won't interfere with corrections. Kamiya confirms this, saying the system is designed to accept modifications made with developer authority. Since Kamiya is logged in with developer mode, Leafy believes the application programming interface, API, should open. Leafy immediately jumps on it, ready to search for it, and in no time, she finds it. Kamiya asks her if she can access it. Leafy mentions that it looks impossible from the console, but if he dives in, he might be able to. With this, Leafy dives in before Kamiya could warn her that it is dangerous. Once she is in, she finds the access point and she starts inputting the set of instructions she wants. In the process of doing this, the maintenance AI kicks into action because it believes that Leafy is a bug. Realizing that she is in danger, Leafy increases the speed at which she is doing what she is doing. Seconds later, she is able to access it, and she does what needs to be done before frantically diving out of there. With sweat running down his face, Kamiya asks Leafy if she is fine, and she assures him that she is okay. However, she mentions the fact that she almost got eaten by the maintenance AI. Kamiya is not surprised by this because he knows that Leafy entering the system isn't normal behavior. He figures out that the system must have recognized her as a bug and tried to eliminate her. Leafy freaks out when she hears that she almost got terminated. Kamiya then asks her if she can peek into the system from the console, which doesn't require that she go inside. Leafy does this, and she screams out in shock when she realizes that the maintenance AIs have multiplied, and there are now a lot of them. When Kamiya hears this, he realizes that accessing the same API again would be pretty difficult. Leafy apologizes for this, but Kamiya lets her know that it is not her fault, but proof that the system is working correctly. In fact, Kamiya believes that he should be the one apologizing to Leafy for making her embark on such a dangerous task. Nonetheless, he is glad that she is safe, and Leafy rushes over to hug him. Thanks to Leafy's hard work, Kamiya gets the option for the instant build, and he activates it. Anemone returns later to see that the base has gotten so different and bigger. There are more rooms, and there are also barricades to protect the base. With this, the base jumps to level 3, and Anemone talks about how amazing the magic stones are. Kamiya then tells Anemone to use any hut that she likes, but suggests she decide quickly on which one she wants. Anemone is surprised, and she asks him why he said this. She hasn't finished asking her question when a beam of light that houses a portal hits the middle of the base, and Kamiya tells her that they are about to run out of huts. By the time everything clears out, a bunch of individuals are seen looking around, wondering where they are. Among them is a boy named Azel and his mother, Rira. Startled by their presence, Anemone reaches for her sword, but Kamiya stops her. Kamiya notices that Azel has already put himself in front of the other villagers as a shield, just in case. Kamiya takes a deep breath before introducing himself to the fellas, telling them that he has just been living there for a few days before they arrived. Kamiya mentions that the base is surrounded by a forest where monsters appear, and at night, the monsters attack the base. In order to survive, Kamiya tells them that their cooperation is needed. Taking a page from Erwin Smith's leadership, Kamiya speaks with a stern voice, asking the new fellas to lend him their strength. Just then, an old fella with white hair, Sylvian, steps forward, asking Kamiya if he just arrived in the area too. Kamiya mentions that he was guided by a magic stone. Sylvian replies that he has heard of it, but he never thought a day would come when he would be called to the source ore while he was still alive. Suddenly, another villager, a bulked-up dude, Waldo, rushes in, telling his comrades not to take Kamiya seriously. Waldo says there is the possibility that Kamiya pulled them through transfer magic to abduct them. Waldo then turns to two other guys, and they start walking away. Kamiya asks them where they are going, and Waldo mentions that they have to check the surroundings because he can't even confirm if monsters really appear in the area. He tells the others to stay back, while he and the two dudes with him go out to investigate. Kamiya then tells Anemone to protect the other villagers while he keeps an eye on the ones who have decided to check the surroundings. As they walk through the forest, Kamiya urges the villagers not to go too far, but Waldo is so stubborn that he ignores all of Kamiya's warnings. Apparently, the area around the base is meant for resource gathering, but at the same time, it is a dangerous zone where monsters appear both day and night. According to the game system, one can't go to another base once they leave the current one. The further a player goes from the base, the stronger the monsters become, which is why the whole thing is a system designed to restrict players' actions. Moments later, Waldo and his guys find a bunch of cute bunnies with horns on their heads. One of them asks Kamiya if the bunnies are one of the monsters that attack the base, and Kamiya confirms this. However, Waldo doubts this fact, and Kamiya decides to stay back and let him learn the hard way. Unknown to them, the bunnies in front of them are known as the Hunter Bunny, and they are a carnivorous and fierce rabbit-type monster. The bunny practically lulls its prey into a false sense of security with its harmless appearance, then surrounds the prey to attack in groups. Before Waldo and his guys know what is happening, the bunnies descend on them. The trio screams in agony and Kamiya rushes toward them, telling them to close their eyes and hold their breath. Waldo is confused by this, but Kamiya tells him to hurry up. The trio reluctantly does as told, and Kamiya whips out 3 bottles of pepper which he throws at the bunnies. The bottle breaks on their bodies, causing the bunnies to fall off and retreat from the attack. Kamiya then tells Waldo and the others to run for it. Instead of turning around immediately, Waldo opens his eyes to check what happened, and some of the pepper gets in his eyes, causing him to tear up. Kamiya then grabs one of the wounded and reveals that they are heading back to base. Without persuasion, they all follow Kamiya's lead because the bunnies have gotten back up again. After running for a while, they safely return to base, and Waldo and others receive medical treatment. With this, the villagers start to settle in, and they split themselves into groups. Some began combat training while some helped in putting things in order. During training, one of the villagers notices that Waldo is more motivated than before. Waldo then mentions that the monsters are a bit tough, but he is confident that they can win the next time they go against them. While everything is going on, Leafy comes up to Kamiya, telling him that she is glad that they have added more allies to the base. Kamiya gives an abrupt answer, and Leafy notices that something is wrong. She asks him what the problem is, and Kamiya points to Aesol. It turns out that in the early stages of the game, there are guide-like events, and characters are set up to help the players understand the rules of the game world. Apparently, Aesol is the character who is set up to teach the players that dead NPCs cannot be revived. During the monster attack that night, it turns out that Aesol will die in battle. The players will then learn that NPCs are irreplaceable as they watch Aesol's mother grieve her child. Since Aesol is going to die soon, Kamiya is left wondering if he has the power to change his fate. After the day's training, Waldo and the combatants return starving, but the women in the group have prepared something to eat. In no time, everyone on the base sits at the table to eat. While they are eating, Aesol playfully asks Anemone about his swordplay. Anemone admits that his sword skills are quite okay, and this motivates Aesol. However, Anemone lets him know that he still has a lot of work to do when it comes to archery. On the other hand, Kamiya is focused on Aesol instead of eating, since he knows that Aesol is just a character put in the game to help players understand the rules of the game. He knows that even if the players don't send Aesol into battle, he would eventually overestimate his own strength, wander into the battle, and then lose his life. This is basically how the players figure out that NPCs don't respawn. Waldo grabs Aesol, patting him on the head, and starts talking about how he has finally become a man, but his mother urges Waldo to stop egging him on. Aesol then tells his mother that monsters are always attacking them, so he has no choice but to learn how to fight. His mother argues that there is no need for him to fight because the adults are there to do so. However, Aesol presents a counter-argument, reminding his mother that he has to protect everyone because this was how his father was too. Rira then tells Aesol that his father was most certainly strong, but he never mistook recklessness for courage. Hearing this, Kamiya finally understands that recklessness and courage are two different things, and if he is going to keep Aesol alive, he might need a new approach. Kamiya realizes that he needs a strategy with a chance of success that is backed by courage. Sylvian joins the conversation, telling Aesol not to be reckless, just like his mother said, and Aesol acknowledges the old man's advice. Sylvian suggests that they work together to protect the village, but it suddenly dawns on them that it is no longer their village. Just then, Sylvian asks Kamiya if there is any booze for them. Waldo is surprised to hear the old man asking for alcohol when they are about to go into battle. Sylvian mentions that he wants the booze exactly for that reason because he has decided that he won't die sober, but Waldo believes that this is a pathetic resolution, and everyone bursts into laughter. Kamiya then tells them that if they can make it through the night's raid, he will see if he can get some drinks for a toast, and Waldo is the first to stand up to celebrate this. However, Kamiya's mood is kind of bad, and Leafy asks him what the problem is. Kamiya mentions that he can't get his head around the fact that he is the one who threw the group into a brutal survival game, although he is aware that it is necessary to make the ultimate game. Leafy agrees with him, reminding Kamiya that without him, the NPCs would not even exist. Kamiya then mentions that he doesn't want to be a trash creator who doesn't take responsibility for what he has created. By evening, Kamiya gathers the group and he lets them know that they are expecting another monster raid, which is why they need to go over their formation for better preparation. Kamiya mentions that those who are not participating in combat are to keep watch on the perimeter from inside the base. He lets them know that the monsters usually come from one direction, but he doesn't want them to be careless, so he wants everyone to split up and keep an eye out. And as for the combatants, the three most skilled with a bow will form an archery squad led by Anemone. Kamiya then tells the others to pick up their swords and move to the front because they are going to be working in pairs. One pair will serve as guards in front of the archery squad, while Waldo's group will be on the front lines with his partner. Waldo is excited when he hears this because he can't wait to get into action. However, he wants to know who Kamiya is pairing with, and Kamiya mentions that Aesol is with him. This shocks Aesol and his mother quickly jumps in, telling Kamiya that Aesol just can't jump into a fight out of nowhere. Kamiya lets the woman know that he actually understands her concern, but he tells her that being in the back doesn't guarantee safety. Kamiya mentions that if Aesol is willing to fight and he is able to, then it means the sooner he gets stronger and better. He adds that this also increases his chances of survival. Even with this, Rira appears to be worried, but Kamiya assures the woman that he is going to do everything in his power to protect Aesol. Apparently, Kamiya is intentionally placing Aesol on the front lines to predict the enemy's movements, since the system AI will be moving to ensure that he dies. Even though it is not a guarantee, Kamiya believes that risks need to be taken if he is to overturn a scripted event. Anemone then tells Rira that she can actually trust Kamiya's combat prowess, but Kamiya lets Rira know that he won't take Aesol unless he is willing. He hasn't finished saying this when Aesol jumps up to say he is willing because he wants to be strong just like his dad. Once everything is in order, Kamiya gives his motivational speech to put the fighters in the right state of mind for the incoming battle. As night falls upon them, Kamiya receives the 4th day's quest, which is to survive the night again. Shortly afterward, the battle begins and everything is going as planned. Kamiya also tells Leafy to help keep an eye on Asel and let him know immediately if anything happens. Anemone stands in the watchtower with her squad, and she orders them to fire the arrows at the goblins. She tells them that it doesn't matter if their aim is rough, as long as they're able to ruin the enemy's formation. While Anemone is scattering the goblins, Kamiya and the assault team go after the isolated goblins. He tells them to finish them off one by one, but urges them not to break the pairs and maintain the numerical advantage. Kamiya also tells Waldo to make sure the enemy doesn't get near the watchtower. Waldo acknowledges the order, telling Kamiya that he doesn't need to tell him. It turns out that the number of monsters has increased, and this is thanks to the increase in base level too. However, the fighters are actually holding out pretty well, even though it is their first battle. The fighters maintain their two-man cells, preventing the enemies from coordinating and then finishing them off. Waldo is the most excited as he goes after the goblins, cutting them down like butter. Waldo is taking on one of the goblins when he notices that it is staring in another direction. Waldo uses this opportunity to take the goblin down, while mocking it for looking away. Unknown to him, the system program has kicked in, which has put the goblins on the drive to take down Asel. The battle continues pretty well, and thanks to the traps that they have set prior to the battle, they are able to reduce the enemy numbers pretty well. Kamiya also notices that the enemies are easy to read, and this is thanks to Asel's presence. However, the game world is not about to let things slide easily. Suddenly, the goblins get stronger and more fierce. Anemone notices that the goblins are already moving in a strange way, and she leaps off the watchtower to join the battle on the ground. Leafy, on the other hand, makes sure to stay with Asel, but suddenly she spots goblins flanking Kamiya, and she warns Kamiya. Before he turns around, the goblins have pushed Asel to the ground. Kamiya panics when he sees this, and he screams at Asel, telling him to get back up quickly. One of the goblins is about to kill him, but this is prevented by Anemone's arrow that puts a hole in the goblin's eye. Surprisingly, the goblin pulls out the arrow and doesn't go after Anemone. Anemone is shocked when she realizes that the goblins are not paying attention to her, which is quite weird given how the goblins usually operate. On the other hand, Valdo is still enjoying himself against the goblins when he is suddenly thrown away by one. Waldo is totally shocked by this, but before they know it, one of the goblins has made its way to Asel. While Asel is shaking in fear, Kamiya screams at him to get up and pick up his sword. Just as Asel is about to lose his head, Kamiya jumps in to block the attack. Kamiya finds himself struggling against the goblin, and he starts wondering if this is the system intervention to make sure that Asel dies. While struggling with the goblin punctures his shoulder with its sharp claws, causing him to scream in pain. One of the goblins gets the free shot to take Asel down, but Anemone is there to save him again. She cuts the goblin and pushes it down. Just as the goblin is about to get up, an angry Waldo shows up to punch the goblin to the ground, while talking about how easy it is to punch the goblins because they are humanoid. Kamiya then tells Waldo and Anemone to pull the goblins away, and Waldo jumps on one of them to brutally punch it to death. Anemone also engages her bow, firing shots at the goblins while telling the fighters to push back the goblins. Kamiya soon finds himself struggling against another goblin, and Kamiya tells Asel to hit the goblin on the head. Asel freezes up, and Kamiya reminds him that this is the turning point of his fate. Kamiya lets him know that he is going to have to fight if he wants to live. Kamiya asks him if he really wants to get strong like his father, and this motivates Asel to strike the goblin's head. This then gives Kamiya an opening to push his sword into the goblin's neck, ultimately finishing it off. Kamiya commends Asel for his bravery and tells him that they just have a few more to go. Kamiya and his men then intensify their fight against the goblins, helping them to take down all the goblins. In the end, Kamiya and his group win, after a long-fought battle that leaves their swords in a pretty bad shape. The people rejoice as day breaks, and Kamiya receives the notification congratulating them that they have survived the 4th day. They return to base, and Asel runs into his mother's arms. Kamiya is glad that he was able to overturn Asel's fate, and with this, he is motivated to overcome the stampede without losing anyone. This is how confident he is, but little does he know that the game world will always collect its dues. Soon afterward, Kamiya is able to raise the base level to 5. The villagers are impressed by the amount of changes that occurred from doing this, and Sylvian finally sees the true power of the magic stone. Apparently, they were able to do this, thanks to the monsters that they defeated and the supplies that were collected in the forest, because they are always accumulating as resources inside the magic stone. In exchange for these resources, they can actually strengthen the base using the magic stone's power. As the base is strengthened, the residents' growth also increases. This basically means the more the base is secured, the stronger the residents become. However, Kamiya lets them know that they won't grow stronger without doing anything because change occurs with training and experience. Kamiya suggests they finish everything quickly so that they can go for their usual training. Thanks to the fact that they were able to raise the base level using instant build mode, Kamiya secured personnel and equipment that are quite substantial for the early stages of the game. With their tight coordination, they were able to survive the 2 raids that followed. Each of the NPCs grew, and their coordination became pretty smooth. Even Asel started growing at a remarkable pace, and since then, the AI hasn't focused its attack on Asel again. And before they know it, The 7th day arrived, which is the day they are to challenge the stampede. Early that morning, Rira finds Kamiya tending to the swords, and she tells him that breakfast is ready. Kamiya thanks her, and she asks him what he is doing. He then replies that he is sorting out the weapons with low durability. Since that night is the stampede, he believes it would be fatal if the swords broke during battle. To differentiate the weak swords, Kamiya ties red strings to them, and he tells one of the fighters passing by not to use the swords marked with red because their durability is low. He urges him to tell everyone else too. After this, Rira tells him that breakfast is ready, but Kamiya is still not ready to eat as he tells the woman that he needs to check the traps first. That evening, Kamiya gathers everyone to tell them that they have finally reached the 7th day when the stampede occurs. He lets them know that there is a possibility that it is going to be on a larger scale than what they have encountered so far. Kamiya tells those who will be remaining inside the base to pick weapons so that they can protect the base from the inside too. Kamiya informs them that they are going to be employing a compact formation to avoid getting overwhelmed by the enemy's numbers. He sets out the formation and places himself on the front lines, while Waldo is behind him, and Anemone stays on the rear where she can provide long-range attacks. Once he is done setting out the formation, he tells the fighters to move out. He also urges them to double-check their weapons, but Assel appears to be holding a weak sword because he didn't get the information. Nonetheless, he joins Kamiya on the front lines and everyone prepares for battle. Kamiya tells them to close the gates while they prepare for the enemies. Rira and the other residents then sit behind the gates with their own weapons to make sure they are protected. Rira stands up from where she is to check on her son, and she is shocked to see that he is holding one of the weak weapons. Moments later, the goblins emerge in large numbers, and they look hungry for blood. The notification bar turns red as Kamiya is warned about the large-scale invasion that is about to occur. As usual, they are expected to survive the stampede, but the highlight of everything is Asel's weapon, which is obviously weak. With the large number of goblins coming out, one of the villagers starts to tremble as he talks about the large number of goblins in their presence. However, Kamiya motivates them, telling them not to flinch because they have been preparing for this exact day. Kamiya then orders Anemone to fire the flaming arrows. Anemone and the other archers get to work as they fire the arrows into the horde of goblins. The arrows immediately give off a large explosion that rocks and incinerates nearby goblins. Waldo and the other fighters are impressed by this, and they call it the best fireworks. Apparently, Kamiya intentionally made sure he leveled so he could get the gunpowder production finished. Even though he kept the landmine design simple, he believes that it is more than enough for a pack of brainless goblins. Kamiya then tells the fighters to prepare themselves because they still have more to come. More goblins soon emerge from the forest, and they look angrier than the first set. However, this doesn't instill fear in Kamiya and his squad as they easily cut down the goblins charging at them. In the watchtower, Anemone tells her squad to leave the ones on the ground to the close combat fighters. While they try to take out the ones coming from the rear, the goblin numbers continue to increase, and some even make it to the fence. But those sitting behind the fence are able to repel them. Kamiya and his men maintain the advantage as the goblins fall into the traps already prepared for them. Kamiya is already praising his men for dominating the battlefield because he believes that they have a chance to turn things around. Kamiya hasn't finished saying this when they hear a disturbing noise, and the ground starts to shake. Anemone, who is in the watchtower, screams at Kamiya, telling him that there is something coming for them. Just then, a giant, scary goblin appears from the forest, leaving Kamiya utterly shocked and frozen. What has just appeared is a goblin lord, and it is a high-ranking goblin subspecies that possesses overwhelming power. Its roar inspires nearby goblins, granting them a temporary status boost. Kamiya cannot believe his eyes because a goblin lord has no business showing up in the very first stampede. As if that is not enough, the goblin lord shows up with even more goblins. To make matters worse, the goblins appear to be stronger, and Rira sees her son struggling against one of the goblins. She fears that things might take a dark turn if it continues this way. While the others are fighting off the goblins at the fence, Rira leaves. One of the goblins breaks through and Kamiya screams out to warn everyone. Anemone realizes that things are getting out of hand, and she tells her comrades that they need to leave the watchtower to help. Anemone and her squad jump off, and she lands safely, but one of them gets hurt due to a rough landing. He screams out in pain, and Anemone drags the dude to those behind the fence so that they can help him. She's in the process of this when Rira runs past her with a sword in her hand. Rira immediately screams at her, asking her where she thinks she is going because she is already heading to the front lines. Rira hasn't even covered a great distance when she runs into a goblin. She freezes in fear, and just before the goblin can get her, Anemone takes down the goblin with a precise shot to the head. Anemone then walks up to Rira, demanding to know what the hell she was doing. Rira then reveals that she has to give Asel the sword she is holding because his current weapon has trash durability. Anemone is shocked to hear this, and she immediately tells her squad to fall back because she is proceeding to the front lines. Anemone then tells Rira to continue forward, while she holds off the goblins. As she runs through the goblins, Anemone covers her track with arrows, preventing the goblins from reaching her. Anemone soon retreats to the fence, and standing on the fence while watching the battlefield, she realizes that things are about to get a lot worse. At this point, those on the front lines are already struggling because they didn't expect the goblins to just get stronger out of nowhere. Kamiya then informs them that the Goblin Lord is the cause of their problems. Even Kamiya is surprised that a high-level goblin is showing up in a Day 7 stampede. Some soon find themselves standing against the Goblin Lord, and the Goblin Lord raises its weapon, ready to crush them. They raise their shields to try to block the attack, but the hit from the Goblin Lord is so powerful that it crushes nearby goblins too. The hit from the attack sends some of the fighters flying backwards, and Kamiya asks them if they can still stand. Surprisingly, Asel and one other fighter move in to support Kamiya. The Goblin Lord prepares another attack and swings its big mace at Kamiya. Just as the attack is about to hit, something clicks in Kamiya's brain, and he is able to parry the attack to everyone's surprise. Kamiya celebrates when he sees this, because even though it is a standard mechanic in games, doing it for real is quite terrifying. The Goblin Lord feels the effect of what Kamiya did, and this pisses it off. It roars loudly to push its subordinates to the front lines. Asel and the others immediately come forward to protect Kamiya. They tell him that they are leaving the Goblin Lord in his hands. They urge him to take care of the Goblin Lord quickly because they are running out of breath already. Kamiya then dashes toward the Goblin Lord while parrying another attack from it. Even Kamiya could see that a war of attrition would be bad for them, and he had to find a way to end the fight as fast as possible. Just then, he hears Leafy call his name, and he tells her to bring up the ring console. Leafy confirms the order, and she opens the console, and Kamiya realizes that the AI balancing feature is currently on. Leafy asks Kamiya why he needs the console, and he points out that the ring modifier is on. In addition to this, the generation AI is overloaded, which means he can trigger all critical. Leafy is confused because she has no idea what all critical means. When talking about the critical hit, it is an attack that ignores defense and deals double damage, but these are usually determined by random number generation. The random number generation is like rolling a dice, and these numbers determine the in-game probabilities. However, the game actually has a bug that they didn't fix. If one parries 15 attacks in a row, the AI would try to adjust the RNG because hit rates are too low. However, this adjustment is what overloads the memory, causing the RNG system to freeze, and the temporary result is that all attacks become critical hits. Leafy is shocked when she hears this, but Kamiya, on the other hand, just found a way out. The reason why he obviously didn't fix the bug is that parrying 15 consecutive attacks was nearly impossible even in playtesting. With this in mind, Kamiya sets his sights on obtaining 15 consecutive parries. He baits the Goblin Lord into hitting him, but he parries it. Kamiya continues doing this, and he also counts. Asel believes he is getting overwhelmed, and he calls out his name, but Kamiya tells him not to worry about him because he has a plan. At that moment, Rira has made it to the front lines, and she sees her son struggling against one of the goblins. Kamiya continues to taunt the Goblin Lord while making sure he parries his attacks. Before he knows it, he gets to 13, and he knows that if he continues with this momentum, he will get it done. Suddenly, one of the goblins breaks free from Asel and dashes toward Kamiya as he reaches the 14th parry. Asel runs after the goblin, and just as it is about to cut Kamiya, Asel jumps in to attack it. He hits the goblin on the head, but his sword breaks. This leaves him open to attack, but Rira comes in clutch, and she throws a new sword to Asel. With the sword, Asel is able to cut down the goblin. Fortunately, Kamiya also reaches the 15th count, and he is able to parry the last attack. Kamiya smiles when this happens because he has finally gotten his hands on what he wants. He tells his men that everything will be over in a second, and he wastes no time dashing towards the Goblin Lord. He delivers high-speed cuts to the Goblin Lord's body, and he lands the final blow to its neck. Kamiya jumps off the goblin's body and sticks the superhero landing just to look cool. With all the cuts inflicted on the goblin, it stands no chance, and it crashes to the ground in a loud thump. The other goblins see this and realize that they have no chance. Without thinking twice, the other goblins make a run for it, immediately abandoning the battle. Waldo and the others are shocked when they realize that Kamiya actually took down the giant, scary goblin. Rira and her son stand close to the goblin with a smile of victory on their faces. Unfortunately, they didn't have an idea that the Goblin Lord was not completely dead. With the last of its strength, it goes after Asel, but Rira jumps in to protect her son. Instead of Asel, Rira gets clawed up by the goblin. Kamiya is shocked to see this because he wasn't expecting the goblin to still be able to move. Kamiya immediately goes after it and delivers the finishing blow to completely end it. However, the goblin has torn Rira's chest, and Kamiya watches as Asel cries over his mother. As she dies, she tells Asel that she is leaving to meet his father, and she tells him to always tell her lots of stories. With this, Rira meets her end, and Asel lets out a loud scream of pain and agony. Everyone watches in silence and pain as Asel grieves her dying mother. Just then, the congratulations for clearing the Stampede quest come in, but this is good news that comes with tears. The next morning, Kamiya is seen staring at Rira's grave, and Leafy shows up, telling him that she couldn't figure out why the Goblin Lord appeared, but at the same time there is no trace that the game settings were altered. Leafy then tells him that he still has the authority to tweak minor game settings, even though he has been stripped of Game Master status. Leafy continues yapping until she realizes that Kamiya is not even listening. Just then, Kamiya mentions that he was arrogant because he was the one who created the game, leaving him to assume that he knew everything about it. This gave him the confidence that he can actually handle whatever comes his way. In the end, he blames himself for Rira's death because she is not even supposed to die. Leafy tries to comfort him, telling him that the base would have been wiped out if not for his brilliance. Leafy tells him that he is to thank for the NPCs that are still alive. Kamiya agrees that they are alive, but at the same time, he thinks he is to blame because he is the one who created them and left them to suffer in the game. Overwhelmed by everything, Kamiya walks off into the distance and tells Leafy that he needs to be alone for a moment. Moments later, Anemone finds him where he is sitting. She asks him what he is doing, but he refuses to answer. Anemone then raises her bow and fires, taking down one of the birds flying above them. Kamiya is shocked to see this, and Anemone uses this to explain to him that in this world, they stake their lives just to survive. Anemone mentions that sometimes they take lives, and then sometimes their own lives are taken. However, she doesn't think this is anyone's fault, because this is just how things are. Kamiya wants to argue with this, but doesn't find the right words. Anemone realizes that he is still broken, and she tells him to follow him because she has something to show him. She takes him to the training ground, and surprisingly, Aesol is already back in training. In fact, he is working pretty hard, and he doesn't look like a boy who just lost his mother. Anemone tells Kamiya that Aesol has been on the training ground since after the funeral. Kamiya is shocked to hear this, and Anemone lets him know that Aesol already said he wants to have plenty of stories to tell his mother, which is why he is determined to get stronger. Just then, the dude training with Aesol gets tired and asks for a break. Aesol turns, and he is shocked to see Kamiya. He then runs over to him and with a smile on his face asks Aesol to spar with him. Aesol tells Kamiya that he wants to get stronger so that he can have lots of stories to tell his mother, and because of this, he's not ready to fall. Aesol's words get to Kamiya, and he agrees with Aesol, saying he is right. Kamiya grabs a sword and tells Aesol that he is not going to hold back against him. Aesol is up for the challenge, and he dashes toward Kamiya. Kamiya finally lets go of his moody self with the realization that the NPCs are alive, and they are living with far more strength than he even imagined. Since this is the case, Kamiya decides that he is not going to be a setback for them because he has to show them a way of life that they can be proud of. Later on, two dwarves, a master and his apprentice, are seen in the forest close to the base. The master finds a bent arrow on the ground, and he tells his apprentice that he can sense traces of mana in the arrow, which means it was created with a magic stone. The apprentice is shocked to hear this, and his master tells him that they might finally have a lead. In no time, the two find themselves getting closer to the base. The villagers are going about their daily business when the dwarves suddenly arrive at the gate. Leafy informs Kamiya of their arrival, but he doesn't look surprised, as if he was already expecting them. The dwarven master, Dorn, wastes no time demanding to meet the head of the village. His apprentice, Ginger, tries to calm him down, telling him that a little bit of politeness won't hurt. Kamiya then appears at the gate, telling Dorn that he is the one he is looking for. Dorn goes straight to the point, asking Kamiya if he has mana stones in the village. Ginger is shocked at how blunt his master is, and he cuts in, telling Kamiya that they are traveling dwarves in search of rare materials. Ginger says they heard that there were mana stones in the village, and they were hoping that he might let them see the stones. Kamiya then tells the two that they were about to have dinner, and he suggests that they sit down to have dinner. Kamiya invites them in, telling them that they can continue the conversation over a meal. Ginger excitedly accepts the invitation, but Dorn couldn't care less. Minutes later, everyone is at the table, and Ginger looks really blown away by everything around him. Kamiya knows the two as craftsmen, and he knows that if he can recruit them, he will be able to handle upgrades and develop magic tools and weapons that he can't create on his own. While they eat, Kamiya asks Dorn if he was concerned about seeing mana stones, and he says yes. Ginger mentions that they are actually traveling in search of a material known as the Philosopher's Stone. Apparently, the Philosopher's Stone is considered a myth, but most believe it actually exists. There are weapons in circulation to the present day that were reportedly forged using the stone. However, even among the dwarves who have been alive for so long, none of them has ever seen the Philosopher's Stone. Ginger mentions that, as the craftsmen that they are, it is the ultimate rare material that they have to get their hands on. Deep down, Kamiya knows that there is a Philosopher's Stone item in the Sage's book. But this is something he set as a reward for a special high-level raid quest, which is impossible to obtain via normal gameplay. Basically, Kamiya is the only one who can access the stone. The stone is not just mana, but the relationship between power. Kamiya claims that he is not hiding anything in the mana stone, but there is a reason behind everything. Kamiya then asks the two again if they want to see the stone, and he lets them know that even a raw mana ore is incredibly rare. Kamiya adds that the raw mana ore is important to the village, and Ginger lets him know that they only want to use it for reference. Since they only want to check it out, Kamiya doesn't think there is any issue whatsoever. However, he tells them that they are going to forge some weapons for them in exchange for seeing it. Kamiya reveals that they are under attack by monsters almost every night, and to protect his people, they are going to need high-quality equipment. Since it is a small price to pay, Dorn agrees to make the equipment. Kamiya then tells him that he is going to show him the mana stone once they are done eating. However, Kamiya is worried about how he is going to convince the dwarves to join him. Moments later, Kamiya takes them to the cabin to show them the mana stone. After checking it out, Dorn berates Kamiya for showing them something so hideous because this isn't what he is looking for. Kamiya is shocked to see that Dorn has already figured out that the mana stone is more like a gate than a material. It is basically a conduit for mana, fundamentally different from the material they seek. Kamiya is impressed that Dorn's insight is spot on. Apparently, Dorn is not wrong because the mana stone is merely an interface for the player, and it is not the kind of thing one can actually use as a raw material. Dorn then thanks Kamiya for showing them the stone, but lets him know that it doesn't provide a lead on the Philosopher's Stone that he is looking for. Dorn lets Kamiya know that they are going to be leaving the next morning. Ginger is shocked to hear this, and Kamiya tells Dorn that he is more than welcome to stay longer if he likes, because they have an unused workshop, and there are materials that can be generated using the mana stone. Kamiya lets them know that he can actually provide an excellent production environment for them. Even with all of his sweet offers, Dorn declines, and Kamiya heaves in disappointment. Since they are not going to stay, he reminds Dorn of the promise he made to create weapons because monsters are definitely going to attack again that night. Kamiya tells the two that he is going to lead them to the workshop, and they are free to use any of the equipment there. On the other hand, Leafy is scared that the dwarves might never join them. Kamiya agrees with her, saying Dorn's heart is set upon finding the Philosopher's Stone, and anything less than that won't move him. However, Kamiya knows that Ginger is still young and hungry. As a craftsman, he most likely wants to see how people react to his work to see exactly how much of an impact his skills can make. Kamiya says he knows the feeling because this was how he felt when he started making games. Kamiya believes that Ginger would stay if he saw that he could actually fulfill his potential at the village. Later that night, monsters show up at the village, and Ginger is shocked to see that the monsters are really attacking them. While the battle is going on, the archers talk about how incredible the reinforced arrowheads are because they have incredible piercing power. Ginger hears this, and he mentions that he could have improved the accuracy if he had more time. However, the archers let him know that they are grateful because what he did is enough. At the same time, Ginger notices how good Waldo is with the sword, and judging by how he moves, he believes that a great sword would be better for a big guy like him. Ginger also notices that Aesel would be a better fighter if he could adjust the center of gravity for his weapon. While he is busy imagining all the great things he could do, his master is watching him, and he can clearly see that he is getting swayed. During the heat of the battle, Leafy asks Kamiya if he thinks Ginger would really join them, and Kamiya says his words alone might not be enough to convince him. But with the way he is seeing things, it appears that Ginger is already enjoying himself. The following morning, Ginger steps out of the workshop in preparation to start leaving when one of the villagers walks past, thanking him for his help the other night. Another walks up to him, telling him that they were able to take down the enemies with ease because of him. Ginger smiles, saying he is glad that he could be of help. Waldo and Aesel also come over, telling Ginger that the sword he created was incredible and sharp. Aesel also thanks Ginger for adjusting his sword because it has made it easier for him to swing his sword. Waldo playfully spanks Ginger, telling him that he should just stay in the village so he can make him a custom weapon. Aesel then tells Waldo that Ginger and his master are actually leaving that day. Waldo is surprised to hear this, and he talks about how it is a big shame that they are leaving. Waldo and Aesel then walk away, and Waldo offers his farewell, saying he is sure that their paths will cross again. Everything they said kind of gets to Ginger, and he is still trying to get over it when Kamiya shows up, asking him if he is already leaving. Ginger confirms this, saying his master's focus is locked on the Philosopher's Stone. Kamiya then asks Ginger what he plans to do. Ginger stares in confusion, and Kamiya mentions that he can clearly see that the Philosopher's Stone isn't the only thing he is interested in. Kamiya points out that life in the village is harsh because monsters attack every single night, and even with magic stones, their resources are not abundant. Kamiya comes clean, saying they are short-handed as it is. Kamiya lets Ginger know that it is exactly this reason that the village needs him because his influence matters a lot. Kamiya tells Ginger that his skills basically translate to how long the villagers are going to live. Kamiya then stretches his hand to Ginger, urging him to join them and stay in the village. Before Ginger can make his decision, Dorn steps out of the workshop, telling Kamiya that they are done and are ready to leave. Ginger manages to pull himself together, and he tells Dorn that he wants to stay in the village. Dorn is shocked to hear this, and he asks Ginger if he is serious about what he just said. Ginger replies that he is, and Dorn tells him that he has to forge a weapon. Ginger is confused by this, and Dorn tells him that he cannot let someone who is trash wander out into the world, so he has to forge a weapon to prove himself. Ginger agrees to this, and he gets down to forging the weapon. While he is working on it, Kamiya asks him if there is anything he needs because he can generate materials with the magic stone. Ginger thanks Kamiya, but he lets him know that he would like to do this with his own strength, or else there will be no meaning to it. Kamiya smiles when he hears this, and he walks away to let the guy do his thing. Shortly afterward, Ginger finishes forging the sword, and Dorn checks it out. Dorn realizes that Ginger forged it so that humans can use it. Dorn mentions that a second-rate craftsman looks at the object to do his work, But a first-rate craftsman looks at the people. Since Ginger crafted the sword for human use, Dorn can see where his gaze is fixed. Dorn comes to the conclusion that he has his own fire, and Ginger has his. Dorn is impressed by what Ginger made, and he tells him not to allow his fire to go out while urging him to follow the flame within himself. Ginger is shocked to hear this, and he asks his master if this means he passed. Dorn refuses to say anything else, and as he leaves, he tells Kamiya that he is leaving Ginger in his hands. Dorn makes his way into the forest, and Ginger bows to his master for everything he has learned so far. Leafy and Kamiya smile at each other because they finally have a craftsman, and Leafy says they need to upgrade their production base. Kamiya agrees with her and says it is time they raise the base level. Kamiya immediately increases the base level to 8, and Ginger is blown away, since this is his first time seeing the stone's power. Because the base level has increased, the outer walls and the workshop also got some upgrades. Ginger enters the workshop, and he is left in awe. Kamiya lets him know that the workshop is for him, so he is free to use it whatever way he wants. Ginger thanks Kamiya for this, talking about how he has a lot that he wants to try out. After leaving the workshop, Kamiya tells Leafy that recruiting Ginger was a huge win considering the battles ahead. Kamiya mentions that the state of their equipment is bad, and this is where Ginger comes in. Apparently, the level up has also increased the amount of resources the magic stone can store. Kamiya then mentions that he would like to start accumulating mana in the upcoming battles. It turns out that Kamiya and Leafy are expecting a particular female character now that the base has reached level 8. Thanks to bringing Ginger into the fold, the quality of equipment improved, and the village was able to easily defeat its enemies during battles, thus reducing the burden on the villagers participating in combat. It turns out that Ginger is also acting as a support role for Anemone in the Watchtower. Since they have 3 more days until the next stampede, Kamiya knows that they have to hurry and strengthen their position. On the 11th day, Ginger gathers the villagers because he has something to show them. The villagers are shocked to see the pile of clay sitting in front of them, and Ginger lets them know that what they are looking at are golems. Ginger mentions that it is a magic-driven doll that moves on its own. Golems are basically support items that can participate in battle alongside NPSC, and they can fulfill the same role as the character set as their master. If a swordsman is set as a golem's master, it uses a sword, and if an archer is set as its master, it will know how to handle a bow. Their stats are nothing more than a degraded version of their masters, but they are useful for filing the unit's numbers. Ginger mentions that he has always wanted to build one, and thanks to the fact that they are at the foot of the magic stone, he is able to make them move. Anemone gets curious, and he asks Ginger if the golem can move. Ginger lets her know that once a master is set for it, it can fight exactly like the person, but its abilities will be lower. One of the villagers asks if the golems can assist with chores, and Ginger says yes. Ginger confirms that anything can be done with the golems. Suddenly, the golem's eyes come on, and Ginger is surprised that the golems are reacting. He wonders if there is another source of mana close to them. Just then, one of the villagers screams out to inform everyone that someone is coming. The strange fellow soon arrives at the gate, and when they remove their hood, they turn out to be an elf. With a bright smile on her face, she introduces herself as Yulisha Vibewald and shocks everyone by revealing that she is there to challenge the leader of the village to a duel. It turns out that Yulisha is the daughter of the Queen of the White Forest. Kamiya is not entirely surprised because this basically means he has completed the conditions to bring Yulisha into the fold. Kamiya then steps forward, revealing that he is the leader of the village. Yulisha tells Kamiya that he has to make her the leader of the village if he loses. Yulisha assures Kamiya that he has nothing to worry about because she will definitely develop the village. Kamiya smiles when he hears this, and he asks Yulisha what she is staking on the fight in case she loses. Yulisha argues that she cannot lose, but just to be fair, she tells Kamiya that he is free to ask her to do whatever he wants. Kamiya then asks her if she is not going to go back on her word, and she swears on her mother's name that she is not going to go back on her word. Her confidence leaves Leafy worried, but Kamiya is standing strong like the man he is as he prepares to battle Yulisha. As they prepare for their duel, the villagers retreat behind the fence so they don't get caught in the battle. Sylvian, who is busy enjoying a bottle of wine, asks who Yulisha is, and Ginger mentions that she is an elf from the White Forest clan. He explains that they are pretty reclusive, so they don't really venture into the outside world. Waldo laughs out loud when he remembers what Yulisha said about becoming the village head, which is basically a situation of the strongest becoming the chief. Once everything is ready, Kamiya tells Yulisha that they are going to start the duel once the coin he is about to throw hits the ground. Kamiya does as told, and the moment the coin hits the ground, Yulisha hurls a wind attack at Kamiya. Surprisingly, she is able to dodge it, but the villagers are left in shock and awe because they didn't even know what happened, since it is their first time seeing such an attack. Ginger lets them know that Yulisha used attack magic, and by the looks of things, she is pretty competent with it. While the villagers are worried that Kamiya is going to find himself in trouble, Yulisha is pretty impressed that he is holding out well. However, she increases the tempo of her attacks to see just how much Kamiya can withstand. Nonetheless, Kamiya is able to dodge everything she throws at him. Apparently, Yulisha is a noob killer character. The power of her wind magic is overwhelming since it is hard to see. Once a player fails to master the strategy behind her attacks, they are definitely going to lose, which will ruin their chances of recruiting her. However, Kamiya is confident that he can handle her, since he can easily read her attacks just by how she swings her wand. Just then, one of her attacks heads straight for Kamiya, but he blocks it with his shield. Ulysses is shocked when she sees this because it is the first time she's seen something like that. It turns out that her attacks work against flesh and blood monsters, but they won't go through an iron shield forged by Ginger. While Ulysses is still trying to pull herself together, Kamiya closes in. Just as he is about to strike her, she leaps into the air with her wind magic. The villagers are blown away when they see this, and they start wishing they could fly like Ulysses. While she is in the air, she starts cooking up a high-level spell, and Kamiya knows that this is going to be fatal if it hits him. Nonetheless, he keeps charging at her, and while Ulysses makes fun of him for running to his death, she has no idea that he is actually planning something for her. Once she is done with the spell, she tries hurling it at Kamiya, but the spell suddenly dissolves, leaving her in shock. Before she can get herself together, Kamiya pulls her down with a sling. Kamiya then drags her closer and points the sword at her, so she can know that she has lost. Kamiya lets her know that her high-level magic didn't work because the magic stone in the area is too low, which basically means the environment doesn't have what it takes to sustain high-level magic. Since Ulysses is down and cannot move, Kamiya counts it as his win. Ulysses also agrees that she lost, but she remains confused and shocked that she lost to someone who doesn't even use magic. Kamiya then reminds her of her promise, and she almost faints when she realizes that she has to do whatever he says. Just as expected, Kamiya asks her to join the group, which she has no choice but to do. Kamiya also tells her to clean up the aftermath of the battle, since she broke everything. Leafy then mentions that it is a bonus for them to have Ulysses, who is a mage among them, and Kamiya agrees to this. With Ulysses around, Kamiya suggests that they test out some new tactics that night. Later on, Kamiya and the squad head into the forest, and while traversing the woods, Kamiya asks Leafy if she has any idea about what is going on in the real world. Leafy replies that she can't view the real world from where she is. She mentions that the only thing she knows is the fact that the Game Master was changed. Kamiya reveals that the change in Game Masters is the reason some parts of the game are going in the wrong direction. Kamiya then tells Leafy that he is determined to reach level 100 as soon as possible. Leafy asks him why he needs to get to level 100, and he reveals that the moment he enters level 100, he can enter the tower. Kamiya lets her know that there are limits to what he can do, even though he is currently operating in developer mode. To do more, he says he has to get to the tower because he needs the power. Suddenly, Ulysses stops him, asking him how much longer they need to walk, and Kamiya says they will keep going until they find some monsters. It turns out that Kamiya is planning to test Ulysses' magic and the golems in preparation for the night's battle. Kamiya then asks her how much magic she can use, and she starts rambling about how she can use wind magic and other elements. However, Kamiya asks her how much magic she can actually use in the area. Kamiya subtly replies that she can only use a few wind-based attack spells and some movement support types. Seeing the way Kamiya is staring at her, she tells him that she is pretty weak because there are only low-grade mana stones in the area, and she could actually do more with high-grade ones. Kamiya then tells her that he is not blaming her, but he wants her to know the type of magic she can use and her limits, because he doesn't want her to make the same mistake she made earlier. Ginger then asks Kamiya if it's his plan to pair Ulysses with the golems, and Kamiya says yes, since they don't have any other residents who can use magic. He figures out that aligning the golem with their magical firepower would broaden their tactical options. He suggests that they set Ulysses as the golem's master so that it can use magic just like her, even if it is not as potent as hers. Kamiya then tells Ulysses to inject her mana into the golems so that she can teach them her magic. Ulysses agrees, and she places her hand on the golem, releasing her magic into it. After she is done, Kamiya lets her know that she can send out instructions by visualizing them. Ulysses closes her eyes and casts a spell to leap into the air. By the time she opens her eyes, the golems are already floating just like her. Since the first trial is successful, Kamiya tells her to use the same tactics to take out the monster bunnies in the distance. Ulysses gladly accepts the instruction, since she hates monsters in the first place. She hurls her wind attack at the bunnies, and surprisingly, the golems follow through, unleashing a wind blast at the bunnies. Ulysses enjoys herself so much and adds more flair to it, forcing the bunnies to run away. Even though they are already running, Ulysses makes sure to take out most of them with her powerful wind blast. Once the monsters are taken care of, she slowly descends and admits that the golems are quite useful. Kamiya then tells her that the golem operates based on its master's strength, so she can't slack off during training. Tired of being ordered around, she nonchalantly says she understands everything Kamiya is saying. With this, Kamiya smiles because they just got an edge in battle. Meanwhile, Onohara is crashing out in the real world because everything he planned out is not going the way he wants it, and he is already thinking of taking a more aggressive approach to the whole situation. That night, the monsters appear as usual, and Kamiya receives the regular Survive the Night quest. Surprisingly, Kamiya puts Ulysses and her golems on the front lines, telling her that she is the key to everything. Being the arrogant, spoiled brat that she is, she replies casually that she knows this. As the monsters get closer, Kamiya realizes that the goblins have started fighting in an organized manner. He doesn't think too much about this because he believes that the higher the base goes, the more peculiar the enemy's fighting style will become. To Kamiya, he believes that it is his time for the village to advance its tactics too. Anemone and her squad are the first to make a move by unleashing a barrage of arrows at the goblins to disrupt their formation. Yulisha also joins the attack as she fires off her magic with a big smile on her face. As she dashes toward the goblins, the golems also stay by her side. Kamiya intentionally placed her on the front lines because her power and movement made her operate like a regular cavalry unit. With Anemone and Yulisha doing the long-range work, Kamiya tells the close combat squad to engage the goblins. Waldo and his squad take on the enemies on the left, while Kamiya moves to the right. With the long-range attacks pinning down the enemies and preventing their advance, it makes it easy for the ground forces to deal much damage. With Kamiya's plan going so well, everyone on the battlefield is enjoying themselves more than usual. Kamiya then tells Waldo to advance quickly so that they can take out the leader to end the battle once and for all. Waldo assures Kamiya that he knows the plan, and just as he is dashing toward the goblin leader, he has no idea that Yulisha is already targeting the leader too. Waldo almost gets hit with Yulisha's attack, but she screams at him to warn him, which gives him barely enough time to escape unharmed. Waldo screams at Yulisha, asking her what is wrong with her, and Yulisha replies that Waldo was the one who was getting in her way. While they are busy arguing, Waldo has no idea that a goblin has closed in on his position. However, Kamiya is able to warn him before he gets cut in half by a trash goblin. Waldo blocks the attack, and Kamiya tells him to continue holding off the goblins while he and the other squad finish the job. Waldo manages to break free of the goblin's hold and he pushes his sword into the leader's neck, killing him. The rest of the goblins see this and fear grips them, but Kamiya and his guys are not about to slow down. They chase down the goblins and make sure that they wipe them all out. After the battle is over, just as expected, Waldo walks over to Yulisha to scream at her for almost roasting him alive. Kamiya already knows that these types of things will happen because they still have issues with their coordination. However, he knows that Yulisha is going to be a powerful asset for them. If nothing else, Kamiya is determined to refine their fighting style for the next stampede that is in 3 days.